everyone. Welcome to the Stellar Woman magazine, the Stellar Woman Show, the show that brings you thriving women's stories, knowledge, and experiences so that you too can learn one or two things, be inspired, make a change in your life, in your families, community, and the world at large. We're here to move knowledge from one woman to another because we believe knowledge is power, of course, unless it's worked upon. You need to take action. We change perspectives. We reveal possibilities to other women in the world. This is our way in which we make a world a better and a brighter world because we are moving light. Knowledge is form of light. So tap into this light and utilize it to brighten your life. So my name is Stella Olivia Kikoyo, and I'm the editor-in-chief and your host for this show. Today we have an amazing stellar woman, Sparkle, a woman who has actually been here at the point of my inception of all of this work and really excited. I remember my team was blown away by what she had to share in the master class. And today, for those who are lucky to be in that master class, today we have a chance, an opportunity to know more about what she does and her whole story and how she got to become the woman that she is. This is Dr. Joanna Abeyie. Dr. Joanna, welcome to the Stellar Woman Show and the magazine.
Oh, thank you for having me. What a nice introduction. Yeah, I did. I forgot actually we had a session earlier, didn't we? Like maybe a couple of years ago, was it? When
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, no,
This is
yeah, you're
very
right. No,
true.
that was really nice. I remember. Yeah, that was lovely. Thank
Yeah.
you for having me back. I'm glad you thought I was still of interest.
Oh, very much so. We've always wanted to have a chance to explore this, and this time because we have grown to be on several platforms, and we are utilizing the knowledge and the internet to move this knowledge to more women. Because that time it was just a masterclass with only those who were present, and
Hmm.
my passion became more clearer that I just didn't want it for those few who could be in front of you, but to have it
Hmm.
for every woman wherever they are in the world. So Dr. Joanna Abeyie is a dynamic visionary leader in the UK, celebrated by her unwavering commitment to inclusive leadership, equality, social justice, with a distinguished career spanning from media, corporate governance, and advocacy. She has emerged as a powerful voice for representation and equity, shaping how organizations see talent, diversity, and transformative power of inclusion. She was awarded an MBE for her outstanding contributions. So she's not only a strategist and a thought leader, but also a mentor, an advocate, a trailblazer who empowers women and represented voices to claim their space and influence. She combines compassion with determination, principle with purpose, and excellence with empathy. She is radiant. And today's issue is our Christmas issue is Radiance Reborn. She's a woman of resilience, integrity, vision, and inspires new generation of leaders. So Dr. Abeyie, welcome to this show. And I don't know if that's enough about you. I know it's just a little bit that we have touched about you, but we want you to start off by telling us who is Dr. Joanna Abeyie? Who are you?
Oh, thank you so much, Stella. That was such a nice introduction. It made me a bit emotional. So just give me a minute because that was very nice. Thank you very much. The question was, who am I? Today I am in a bit of a transitional period in my life because I'm running a consultancy, as you spoke to, which is focused on people and culture and data analysis, and also has an executive search service called Blue Moon and Partners. So I'm running that business while at the same time transitioning to become a barrister with a focus in criminal and public law at the moment, with special interest in human rights. Um, so I'm in that very interesting phase where I'm trying to manage, I guess, delivering high quality client outcomes and output um, as well as achieving academically really high grades to ensure like the best chances of doing a good, getting the grades I want and would need and require to sort of be able to practice law at a very high level, and also to get to the next stage of the of that journey, if you like, which is to go on to do the bar course and to get pupillage at the chambers, of which I know are going to be incredibly competitive to source. So I'm at that sort of strange transitional period at the moment, and then balancing that with non-exec roles that I hold and trustee roles that I hold, and sort of lots of moving parts in my personal life. So it's one of the, I would say today, who am I is probably someone trying their best to do their best in quite a lot of areas of their life. Outside of that, I love horse riding and I ride as much as I can. Used to be sort of every other weekend rather. And probably of late, it's probably been, unfortunately, maybe once a month. But that will change now. That will go back to sort of every fortnight. And I'm an owner of four cats who are my little friends, and yeah, daughter, sister, friend, I guess.
Oh, very good. Very good. We enjoy seeing you on your horses, your horse. I don't know if it's one horse or two, but it's really nice to see you. I would one day want to ride to be on top of a horse.
Ah, you should. You should. Do you know what? It's lovely. They're not. Unfortunately, they're not mine. So, but they are ones that I ride regularly at the stables that I go to. But there are lots of benefits to horse riding. Not only sort of does it require full concentration, so it's kind of a nice opportunity, Stella, to like not be able to think about other things. Um, and you can't like you can't have your music on and things because you need to be paying attention. So it's not like the gym or in a class where you might have music pumping, or you might, if you're doing a run, put your headphones in just to kind of zone out. It's one of those things where you zone out because you have to concentrate, if you know what I mean. And if you go on a hack, it's even nicer because you're sort of concentrating in a very open green space, and it's just building trust between you and this beautiful animal. Um, and so it's a really nice thing to do that just genuinely makes you like, you can't worry about work. You can't
Yeah.
worry about children and bills and business problems because you've got to think about your safety on this horse, and also and communicating to the horse. So it's a really good thing. And apart from that, I'm often, well, like 4 times a week I do reformer Pilates, and that's where I actually get re-energized, and like it doesn't matter what mood I walk in, I'll walk out a lot happier. Like that's guaranteed. It's not a debate on that one. So yeah, so that's I guess me in a whistle stop whistle stop tour.
Fantastic, fantastic. So,
Mhm.
does any of that represent your childhood dream career? Have you, what was it?
Interestingly, as a child, I went through like lots of phases. So we were raised with a lot of pets. So as children, we've all been animal lovers. All three of me, all three of us. So my two siblings, and so as a child, I wanted to like be a vet. I wanted to look after animals and make sure they're okay. And it didn't matter how hard I worked in school or who I got to tutor me. I couldn't really get in science and maths above a like C, at a push sometimes a B. But what it would take to get a C and a B for me was quite a lot. So I realized quite quickly it wasn't like a natural strength of mine. The obviously like the obvious expertise that you might require, like biology, in order to look after them. I have a best friend who's a vet, and she definitely was the right person for the job because that's definitely more her area of strengths. Um, so then I moved into wanting to be a lawyer, which is interesting because I am now doing that. But I didn't go to study law when I did my. I think I could have maybe done. I can't remember if you can do law at A level, but I didn't. Definitely didn't go on to do it at university um, at that time. So I guess in relation to where I'm at now, no. But as a child, what I did fixate on and then pursue was to be a journalist. And I did that for a decade. But at the same time as pursuing that career is when I actually set up the consultancy. So I just didn't realize that I was setting up a consultancy. I just thought I was helping other people that were maybe struggling to get into the creative industries, and in particular at that time, journalism. So I definitely went down a career that I wanted to, because by the time I sort of really fixated on something, so I'd had the phase of being a vet, then the phase of being a lawyer. But then when I really like hyper focused and, as I say, fixated on I've said I've fixated about 25,000 times already, but before, once I'd like got my mindset on that, which is around the age of 16, um, yeah, that was it then. I thought of another career I wanted to be as well. I loved drama at school. And so there was also a time when I was wanting to be like a musical theatre star. That was short-lived. But I eventually did do the journalism, and I did that for a decade. So I definitely lived the childhood sort of dream. And then just by accident, an organization was born out of that experience, if you like, that I've now been running for the last 20 years. And that's given me the confidence to actually go back into, yeah, it's like law, basically. Or not go back, but yeah, transfer to law.
Back to that. Wow, that is so good. You tell us that by accident, and yet you're running this amazing organization. That's inspiring. So your journey has been extraordinary, from media to executive leadership to becoming the voice of equity in the UK. What defining moment shaped the woman that you are today?
Oh, that's a good question. Defining moment. So many. I think I think okay, there's one moment that I know changed the way I saw the world. So when I started to study my A levels in sociology, I was actually talking about this last night at a dinner. I sat next to a reverend and I explained this to her. So it's helpful actually to be able to talk about it again this afternoon. But what was the case really was, as a child, I was raised Roman Catholic. So we went to Roman Catholic church, school, primary school, secondary school, sixth form. And we were, all three of us for a period of time, were also altar servers. So we were quite active within our church. And that had taught me, just through some of the sort of gospel teachings, and certainly studying the GCSE in religious studies, which we had to do because we are in a Catholic school, and then having that sort of threaded through also your more formative years of like 17, 18 as well. I felt that my role really was for those that were having challenges in their lives. So I always felt that, or was taught or understood. Obviously, I was a child interpreting this, but that it was my role to support those that had had a hard time. That God came for those people that were having a difficult time, and so I think innately inside of me as a child, just obviously how your childhood shapes you and your experiences as a child, I always felt that I needed to help everybody else. That the role was to make sure other people were okay first. And then I think if you add to that, like Bible, your interpretations of Bible teachings within the context of the Roman Catholicism, then that also added to, I guess, to that viewpoint. So I say that because then if you've kind of got this idea that I'm supposed to give and I'm supposed to serve others and I'm supposed to make life as pleasant and accessible and as equitable as I can for other people that have had like challenges. Bearing in mind, I was probably I was one of those individuals with the challenges, but I thought that, yeah, that my job was to continue to help people that were from similar backgrounds or had experiences in some way where things were slightly trickier for them to get through processes, which whatever they might be. And so when I then came to do my A levels and I was studying sociology, and we looked at the Marxist view and certainly how it was taught at that grade, because I went on to do a degree in sociology and English. So you learn a bit more about that view. But at that point, much of things like religion and others were given to, how would I put it? They were explained as tools of, in some instances, to keep individuals who were from those socio-economically diverse backgrounds in those positions. You know, that their argument was that actually sometimes faith was used to make people who were in those trickier socioeconomic situations accept that as like God's will, and
Yeah.
therefore not to maybe go for things. And so that just put a slightly different like view or lens in which
Yeah.
to view that to view that teaching, if you like.
Yeah.
And so I think that I'd say that was a defining moment because it I'd always been really determined. I don't know where that came from. Oh, I've got some indication, but I mean the sheer determination that I had and the awareness so young, um, I think that was definitely exacerbated by the idea that I was supposed to help others because that's then what I went on to do. But also the fact that I got to a point where I was being told a lot of things that are happening or the barriers that you have are actually there and they are there to make it more difficult. And you need to overcome those barriers in a way in order to be able to have a life that you might like, because it's not set up for you to get access to the life you might like, if that
Mm.
makes sense. You're going to have to find a way around that. So I think that helped me, and I'd say it's a defining moment because then it didn't matter what barrier was in front of me. I only saw it as something I needed to either move out of the way or like go under, go around, jump over. I didn't actually see it as a block. So and I felt that it had been intentionally put there to make that journey harder. So a bit like if you were trying to run a 100-meter race as
Yeah.
a sprinter, and then suddenly there's like all these hurdles there, but you're not a hurdler, if you know what I
Yeah.
mean. I just thought, well, the task then is to jump over those because I've still got to run the 100 meters, if that makes sense. So I it kind of helped me shape that. So I'd say that my faith shaped quite a lot of how I viewed things and what I was supposed to be like. And then, but I'm not against that, if you like, because I think it's still a thread of everything I do now. It is to try and make things nicer for other people. But then I think that Marxist view gave me an idea that a kind of, I guess, like a different view that you can do that and still also go for the life you want to. You don't have to stay in a state of like oppression in order to be more accepted, or as a decent human being, if you like. So I'd
Okay.
say that was quite a defining moment for me.
Wow, that is
That would have been
so.
about 17, 18, because then after that, that was it. I was off. Nothing could stop me really.
Wow. Wow. And I think for all our subscribers, I think that will be a defining aspect. Just understanding that these hurdles are there for you to get over. They are not there to stop you. And I
Mm,
think most of us, when we see them, it was the way you've described it has just been an aha moment for me as to have that perspective of life that these are there, but they're just there for you to go over.
mm.
Yeah, you
But
don't
I
see
think if you
them
don't
as
listen to,
bad, or you don't see them any like bad. Like some of us end up having more energy focused on them as something bad. But if you see
Mhm.
it as something that is there for you to just go over, and you have then this will and this view that you can get over them anyway.
I think so. But what I wouldn't want to do is for those like listening to play down how difficult a tenacity
Hmm.
is during that period.
Yeah, yeah,
Because every time you take a step forward, and you'll know, Stella, like we're adults, life has done this to us, like it's all, success never just goes like that. It is a lot of this, right? And so you'll know that lots of the women listening to this and will know that it's all very well me going, there are barriers and just move them out the way, like just move them out the way. Some of those barriers are huge. Some of those barriers feel like pushing water up a mountain. And so it's not because you just don't know what that barrier is. If for example, if I was somebody who was disabled
mm,
and the world is set up to make things more difficult for me as opposed to accessible to me, it's all very well me going, just move them out the way.
yeah.
But that might take a lot of systemic, structural, like ethical change in order for that to be the case. So what I guess I'm saying is that that was a moment for me where I started to know that those things were put there intentionally because they didn't have to be there. Like I was able to um, see that, because when I came to work on with companies and look at the way processes were, I was able to say we don't need to do it that way. You could remove that and you'd see more progression of particular populations, or you'd get more of a diverse range of individuals wanting to work for you or applying, for example. So what I don't want to do is give this false sense of security or this very privileged perspective of going, oh, just move things out of the way, because even in the last 24 months, for example, of my business, that has not been a simple task. Um, and there's been many times throughout my career where that moving things out the way takes a lot of resilience, determination, stars aligning, sometimes luck, sometimes mentors, advocates, support systems, mechanisms around you to say, I'll help you through this. And sometimes just what the Reverend reminded me of yesterday actually is also, in order to keep doing that, you have to believe, in order to keep coming up with a solution, to keep problem solving, to keep walking forward, you also have to believe that it's going to be better.
Yes.
But
Yes.
if you've had, say, 48 months of a lot of things going wrong, that is also another mental barrier, that's not one necessarily put there by external. That can be your brain looking at the data and going, but you've been problem solving for 24 months or 36 months. It's not getting that much better, maybe a little bit. So I really want to be clear to listeners that I'm not saying that in a way that's like, I'll just do that, because you still have to navigate all the things that are the barriers with a mindset that's like, if I do that, I have to also believe that that's going to get better, because evidence might be showing you that in spite of all of that, it's actually not getting significantly better. And at that point, sometimes you can go, I give up a minute. I'm exhausted from the troubleshooting, or I'm exhausted from mitigating risk every day, sort of thing. So while it's a defining factor, I think it's also important to manage your own personal expectations, that you are allowed to go, this is hard and it's not fair. And sometimes things are just not nice for too long. I think that's also okay to say that to yourself and give yourself a minute.
Yeah. Yeah. Give yourself grace. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, as well. Oh, very good. Thank you for that. So, what early experiences or influences inspired your deep commitment to representation and equity?
Um, so I think it started with myself, in that when I was trying to pursue a career in journalism, I found it difficult because one, I didn't know anyone. Like my parents had like jobs that weren't in that sector. Two, if you're raised on a council estate and all your friends from your school are from council estates, your network is different. It isn't necessarily, I'm not saying it's like lower than, it's just different. And so your experiences can shape that, and therefore you're not sure how you fit into what can look like quite a glossy world. But if you're in a house where, like on my council estate, it wasn't uncommon that a lot of our flats had mold in them, for example. It wasn't uncommon that some of the families there would have been, on free school meals. That stuff wasn't uncommon among that our community, right? So suddenly then thinking that you as that person in that environment, although we were all talented, skilled, valuable human beings, could walk into this really glossy sort of magazine world and and fit in or be accepted or wanted. That takes quite a lot of what would what would I call it, like confidence. So I think it wasn't just about, oh, I don't know anybody and maybe I don't have the money to work for free all the time, but it was also the reality that do I even belong in these environments? Like, and how do I navigate them once I'm there?
Okay, very good. I think of Frozen.
Have I frozen?
Yeah. Let me just pause this and see. Let's continue. So, was there a moment when you realized that your voice was meant not just to speak, but to lead?
Yeah, I guess what I found, yeah, I guess so. So when I went to university and I started to um so when I got by the time I got to university, I had started to become successful at securing work experience. So I managed to, in one of my work experiences, I interviewed a young man called Samuel Kosumu, and as time went on, he and I and six others or five others then created our first charity, Elevation Networks, which exists now as inclusive boards, I believe. Um, and I think when I met him and we started to, I guess, build out what Elevation Networks was going to be, and I ran an event um, at the BBC. So the BBC had sponsored my master's at that time. I'd gone into journalism, I'd done my degree, and done lots of work experience, and I wanted to then do the MA in journalism. And so the BBC sponsored that. And I asked if I could run an event with them, which was to give some insights and networking opportunities and education, if you like, to people that were from similar backgrounds to me. So while I was at the BBC, I had ran this event. And I guess that was a moment when I realized that when I speak, adults wanted to hear what I was
Wow.
saying because I suggested the idea. And this was a deputy managing director of the whole of BBC magazines going, really great idea. What do you need from us? And I said, just a room, really. And I'll bring the speakers. If you could make sure there's a room and like some refreshments,
Yeah.
then yeah, happy days. I'll do the rest. So I got the speakers, created the flyers, got a photographer down and someone to video, and then just promoted it as much as I could among not just the student population, but organisations that were there to help young people with an interest in journalism, but who might not otherwise get access to an opportunity like that. So that really helped, I think, me realise that, oh, when I suggest something, it's quite sensible, if you like, because somebody's listened to it and let me host it. And then that became something I ran four times a year for another like 4 years, with not just with the
Wow.
BBC, but with other companies. And it also meant that once I'd run those events, I would then try and link the people that had attended with work-based opportunities. So then I realized that they weren't just listening to me in running an event, but then they were also listening to me when I said they're really talented, you should consider them for a job, or you should meet them and get to know them and see if there's an opportunity. So I guess it's probably around the age of about 20, 21 when I started to recognize that, yeah, that people listened to some of my ideas, if you like, and that when I problem solved, people thought they were quite useful solutions for all parties.
Yeah. That is great. That's really a great revelation to you. At that
Mm.
age, yeah. Oh, such a blessing, really, to feel that your voice can be heard.
Mm.
Yes, ideas are worthy because some of the women, most of us, take a lot of time to actually utilize our voices. We always
Mm.
think they can't be heard, nobody will listen. So why
Mm.
bother? And
Hmm.
therefore your ideas stay within you. And
Hmm.
yeah, that doesn't take you to the level that you want to go. You cannot even use your voice to shape the world, to make a change in that regard.
I think, Stella, on that point, I think it's a really good point you raised because I do think that there are a lot of environments that can make it unsafe sometimes, in which not just women, but anyone can feel like disempowered because if they share their ideas or they've shared a viewpoint, it's not necessarily been heard. But one thing that I've tried to hold myself to, even at this point in my career, is you have to hold your integrity. So if you've been asked to give an opinion on something and you've got a really constructive, productive, progressive contribution to make, then I feel like it's worth saying it. Even if, and I always say to people, use your voice even when it's shaking. Sometimes you're anxious, you're nervous, you've got that tremor, your hands are a bit shaky. And I always think if you can't do it for yourself, do it for the people that want to be in the room, but are not able to get into the room, that you might be in. So if I'm sitting in a room, let's say in the cabinet office, and we're talking about something to do with, you know, um, the appointment of very senior leaders into the civil service and across government, I might be anxious about how I'm going to say what I'm going to say. I might think, oh, I'm not going to sound like the other people in this room. But I
Yes,
always think that the other people that you're saying this on behalf of aren't in this room. So
yes,
rather than waste that seat, at least at least advocate for the people that aren't in the room. You've got the privilege of sitting here. So sometimes I think even if you don't think you're going to be heard, there's something in telling yourself
Mm.
that at least I said it. Like,
Mhm.
at least I know I raised it. Whereas actually, if you don't say anything, then you don't know that it's going to be disregarded. But as long as you said it, then you
Yeah.
can't be held to, well, what did you do about it? Well, I mentioned it several times. Like you can square that with yourself and your own
Yeah.
integrity.
Oh, wow. That's amazing, Dr. Joanne. That's really, really good for all women to be able to just understand that the opportunities and privilege to be on that table or in that space. And once you take it to that level of understanding and know that there's a person you're going to who's going to depend on your voice, and also knowing that at least you said it. If people don't take action about it, at least you did your part. You played your part in that regard. That is
Mm.
great. That is great. So you have pioneered inclusive recruitment, transformed how organizations think about talent. What does true inclusive leadership actually mean to you?
I think it's not what's happening at the moment. Not for everyone, but I think it's not the discourse. I should rephrase that. It's not the discourse that's, I think, dominating discussions on equity at the moment. I think at the moment people have, whether it's through politics or intentional media misrepresentation in opinion pieces, for example, they've sort of positioned that inclusion is about taking from one person or one population and giving it to another, when actually inclusion is about equity. So equity is not equality. You can't really get to equality unless you've understood equity. So equality is fairness, but you can't provide fairness if you don't know what makes it fair for different populations or different people. So what might makes a process fair for a neurodivergent person could be different for what makes a process fair for a woman who's neurotypical, for example, or a man who is gay, or uh, a person who is a Muslim or Jewish. What makes something equitable for them will look different, and it could be because of the identities that I've just raised, that their ethnicity, or whether they're disabled or neurodivergent. But it also could just be the way they personally operate, just the way they're just their internal makeup, the way that their brain works. So I think what inclusive leadership is a very clear, simple understanding that all you're supposed to be doing is creating a level playing field. And you can't create a level playing field until you understand what's making that football pitch bumpy for some and really smooth for others. And
Mhm.
so, like, if you think about it in that regard, like if there's one team playing on really fantastic conditions, then the chances of them having a positive outcome is increased, isn't it? If you've got someone playing on the side of a pitch that's, I think term is like waterlogged, or it's got litter all over it, or the team haven't got the right fitting boots on. The coach has been off sick for 6 months, and they've been, like, if their conditions look different, then you're not in an equitable situation. And so I
Mhm.
think it's just, how do I, like, as a leader, it's how do I level the playing field to make sure that everyone's got the opportunity to compete in a really successful way. And then whoever wins, then, they've won based on an equitable competition, which has been
Yes.
fair and open, and therefore the outcome is based on merit. And that is the meritocratic element. I think at the moment, how people are talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion is that we're giving jobs to women because there aren't a lot of women in senior positions. So, so companies have decided to give jobs to women. Like, nobody's getting a job but based on gender. Like, if that was the case, data would look very different. What's happening and should have been happening, and why we're seeing the progress, is that what was a barrier, unnecessarily man-made, and I don't mean man-made by the gender-wise, I mean humans made the barrier. Why that has been all that they've done is try to take away those barriers that were unnecessary to create a more equitable field of competition, which has therefore then meant that others have become successful because guess what? They've had equitable circumstances in which to compete. So for me, inclusive leadership is being able to identify. So say if I'm the manager of Joanna and Stella, Stella needs these things to be successful in the job we've hired her to do, and Joanna needs these things to be successful and productive in the job we've hired her to do. As a leader, I need to keep the goal really clear for everybody in that team. This is we're at A, the aim is we're getting to B, and then saying, and this is the role and the way you contribute to us getting from A to B. And what do I need? What do you need from me to make sure that you have all you need to be successful at that contribution, to be productive and effective in your contribution to that goal from A to B? I don't know that it's necessarily put that way. I think sometimes there's focus on language or other things which are important, but they are things that you come to learn if you take each individual as an individual, if that makes sense. If you spend time with Stella, understanding what makes Stella productive and effective in the role, you'll start to learn the language and the way to motivate. What is a value to Stella? How do I get her to do more? If I think she's brilliant, but I think she's not reaching her potential, what does she value that I can leverage to get her to go that bit higher? So I think it's first of all, as a leader, going, you're not taking from one population and giving it to another. You're trying to create a level playing field. And then in doing that, you're wanting to get to know the team members as individuals so that you know how to provide them all with that value that they, with the encouragement and the support and the guidance to get the most out of them to help you lead them to the B, the outcome.
Mm.
I think at the
Oh,
moment it's just been a bit, I just think there's messages that conflate the reality of the ask, and it's very simple, and it doesn't actually put preference over anyone. And certainly when I've been working in the public sector, one of the big priorities for me is for people to really look inward at their values and ask themselves in their mind, if they're really true to themselves, do they see humans, irrespective of what their identity is, as standing next to each other? Or are there some humans they have above and some humans they have below? And I think if you're honest with yourself about that, if you find that actually, I think I might think certain humans are of more value to me in the workplace than others, then just reflect on that a little bit, because there's no human anywhere in the world that is any less than another. We're just humans.
yes.
We stand next to each other. The expectations on us might be different. If you're in government, we have expectations that you lead with us in mind. If you're a police officer, we have expectations that you uphold the very standards you hold us to. So
Yes.
I'm not suggesting that your ask isn't different, but as humans from the outset, it should be that they're treated as equally of value.
Okay, fantastic. You talk a lot. You've mentioned a lot. There are things for us to understand in terms of the importance of leveling the field of all the players that are going to be playing in that match and knowing how to move each player from A to B to the goal. For them to feel that everything is okay and we want to get the best out of them and understanding the value. And it's just so much connected to another person that I interviewed. But she talked about it in terms of supporting the individual beyond just giving them something. When you give them something and you think they haven't performed, yet I gave them this, by the end of the day, that individual could be challenged by something else. And you need to go into understanding them as individuals. And I thought, and having these interviews back to back, and I just think, wow, what
Mm.
a great
I
privilege.
agree. I absolutely agree. That's why I say, that time spent getting to know Joanna, that time spent getting to know Stella, trust builds up, psychological safety builds up. So if there were challenges, if there are things happening to the point that your other guest mentioned, you're able to tackle that, because equity for each individual can change dependent on where they are in their life and what's happening in their life. And so what they might need at one point to be successful might change. You know, anything can happen in life. And so your guest was absolutely right, that but you have to take them as individuals in order to, yeah, for them to even feel safe enough to tell you that their equity looks different now.
Yeah, it looks different. Thank you for that. So many know you as a leader who blends compassion with strategy. How do you balance empathy with the demands of high performance?
That's such a good question. I'll say that's definitely something that I have to work on every day. Um, my empathy is of an unnatural level. It's quite an extreme level of empathy. The feedback tells me that, but I can often feel it. I can be in a room and I'm picking up everything, and by the end of the day, I'm incredibly uh, drained from that. And I think I can also, in all scenarios, understand where someone's coming from, even even if that truth isn't very positive. Like I can understand. It's almost like I can hear what they're not saying sometimes, and I can see what is going on, and so that's helpful in a way because I think with a lot of what I do and all of my career when I was a journalist, it was building trust with people and so that they would open up and talk to a complete stranger in a way that would give us like really helpful content. So a reader that's really keen to know more about that person does feel like they get to know more about that person insofar as the interviewee's comfortable. So I think empathy's helped in that way to sort of disarm and create a safe space for people to share. I think also when you're working in equity and inclusion from a people and culture perspective, people have to trust that you've got their interests at heart, that you're the impartial person, especially when you're an external, and that actually you're trying to listen because you want to help. And so an ability to speak to complete strangers and say, look, I'm here to help, as opposed to set you up, get you into trouble, break your confidence, hire, fire, tell some manager after this confidential chat that you're better or not better. You know what I mean? I think that's helped with me doing that job. And also, I think if you don't have empathy, I see it sometimes, unfortunately, in people that have taken up roles in EDI. If you don't have empathy, um, you only start to you can join this agenda based on your own inequity as opposed to recognizing it for others. So, for example, I haven't had to have a transgender friend or colleague or child to understand why it's important that an individual who's transgender has equity. I haven't had to have a disabled child friend, colleague who has an apparent disability to care about the fact that the world doesn't need to be set up in a way that makes it difficult for individuals who are disabled. Like it just doesn't. Like we didn't have to do it that way. We can always undo it. I mean, we are the humans after all, right? So I think empathy is important because it means that you're not really you can't I just don't know how anyone does this job if they're not concerned with everybody else. And I think um it's difficult because you have a lot of compassion. So you're always trying to do the right thing by everybody. And I think when you lead with empathy and when you lead with compassion, you don't necessarily see the politics, the spitefulness, the manipulation, and all those other things that are happening around you or behind you or in the dark because it's not how you're made. So it hits you for six because you can't even imagine how's that even happen? It wouldn't even cross your periphery of creative imagination. So I think it's a tricky one for me because in one hand, I wouldn't have got here without empathy, and it's empathy without a thank you. So a lot of the work I do say as a common counsellor, you could be shaping strategy across the city of London. No one's going to ring me up and go, "Thank you for doing that for me." Like, my housing situation's better because I don't know it's anything to do with you. So you can't do it
Yeah, yeah,
for that,
yeah,
if that makes sense. So you have to really just be doing it because you want to be the person that says in that room, on behalf of people that aren't in the room, this isn't good enough. So I think empathy has helped me to get here. I would never be able to do it otherwise. Compassion has done that. But I think it can be tricky when you ask that question around how do you balance that in a corporate space? Because unfortunately, I've had the privilege of working independently. Others have had to navigate quite at times toxic, unhealthy workplace cultures. So
yeah.
I'm not used to a political game in a workplace. I'm used to a values driven approach,
Yeah.
and not everyone is. So I'm not always ready and anticipating the fact that someone's going to do something that's really unhelpful or nasty or political or whatever you call it. So it
Yeah.
is something I still have to sort of contend with on a daily basis.
Very good. Thank you. So you don't have those lenses. So at times you've given us all that perspective. And empathy is sort of navigating you even in these areas where you don't have the experience. It's empathy and compassion that are taking you to be able to have those conversations and to have more understanding and to be able to help
Mm.
in those aspects. And you brought it out the fact that sometimes you're doing the work. Sometimes people think it's all about getting the thank you, but most of the work that you do doesn't even get you that thank
Mm-mm.
you. Yeah. So you
No, not even from those that have sometimes hired you to do the work. Sometimes they've hired you to do the work and they are not that genuine about doing that work, you know? So you still have, that's why I say earlier to the women listening, as long as you've said it, as long as you've done what they asked you to do, as long as your integrity is there, the
have
rest, control what you can control. Focus on what you can actually control.
very good. Thank you. So, as a community and corporate culture awards judge, oh, what does this mean to you at all?
So I've judged lots of awards over the years, the Royal Television Society Awards, like from the Journalism Awards to the Programme Awards to the Audio Production Awards, um, the Black British Women in Business Awards. So like I've judged a lot. The reason though that I judged these, oh the Visionary Awards as well. The reason I judged these is because the founder Mahari and his colleague well I got to work with Mahari at something within the City of London and I thought he was just such an ally. In and often when as I say, when I'm in environments, not everyone's that quick to be an ally. They can you sometimes have to protect yourself slightly. But Mahari was in a working scenario with me where he was just such an ally that in spite of like the fact that I had a very full plate, when he asked if I would be a judge, it was just a no-brainer for me that yeah, absolutely. And then when I saw last year just how successful they'd been and what they meant to people, um, yeah, I thought yeah. So for me, it meant making sure that really brilliant people one were highlighted, celebrated, that their efforts were seen. I know they probably haven't done any of it for that, but I think it's quite nice to be recognized for those efforts because often you can be, like working really hard at something and it's tough. And it's what I said earlier about, it could be months and months and months, years and years and years, and you've got to still see that it's going to get better. And so sometimes that's just a little boost, a morale boost for a lot of individuals who are selflessly giving to make things better for people. And it's just a nice reminder that you're seen, it's appreciated, and that work is valued. And so that's why I was happy to do it. And I'm really pleased I did because the nominations we got were phenomenal. The people were just incredible. Some of them I haven't been able to forget. So, so I'm really glad that I was able to do that.
Fantastic. So, what have been some of the biggest challenges you have faced as a Black woman leading change in the UK's corporate and media landscape?
I think I think honesty about what people are asking you to do and how genuinely committed they are to that. I found that really difficult. You kind of think you're not, you think you're not, what would I call it, naive. And then you find that you are because you've maybe believed something, um, and possibly that hasn't. So you might have been asked to come in and lead on an agenda and they haven't really wanted you to do it quite as much as you're going to, if that makes sense. Or
Yeah,
it's been
yeah.
seen as a slightly like a how would I put it? How would I put it? You sometimes they haven't set you up to be successful at that, or they've thought that you're not quite um they maybe thought they were going to get a different kind of person, someone that was only going to do a few performative things, not come in and really ask for things to change. And so I think my biggest lesson has been sometimes don't listen to what they say, watch what they do, and do that very and observe that very quickly. So you can see actually that there's not many that what the reality is of what they're asking, how much they really want you to do what they've said. Because there's been organizations I've been involved in or worked with where when you're in a room, it's, oh, yes, 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 yes. And it's almost like as soon as I leave, it's like, no. But, but you all think you're on the same page. And so there's like a lot of confusion that can come from that.
Fantastic. That I can see as a challenge, and I don't know how you gauge what you can do in terms of going past that because it's something that is within rather than out until you have left the room or until a week or two or month has passed and you don't see any action being taken. What is it that you can do in that regard? Or what have you learned to be able to vet their honesty and genuineness in terms of their approach and requests?
I think there's a couple of things now. So if I go in hindsight, if I were to do maybe things again in certain situations, I think what I would have done is, as I said, observed and then observed the action, not just the words. And then
Okay.
I would have changed my approach based on what I was actually seeing as the action. And I would have recognized that the more energy and emphasis I was putting on something and not having that energy met, bearing in mind that, you think you're on the same page maybe as these individuals that have brought you in, that then you just decide internally, okay, I'm going to do what I can control, knowing that they're not really with me on this. That's fine. But I think once you know that, you can stop wasting the energy trying to convince them to be on the same page as you,
Yeah.
and a lot of energy can actually go into the challenge. And so I think sort of, but if you're working for someone, my advice would be to be that intrapreneur rather than that entrepreneur. So you're the intrapreneur inside of the organization and go, what do I need to achieve? How can I do it? And how can I do that while managing stakeholders effectively? And what I realized is most people just want whoever they're working with to make them look good. So I think if as long as you can do what you can control, that's effective, productive, and impactful, results driven, and you can see the effectiveness of that and measure that, you stick to that. And at the same time, to keep the noise away and the distraction and the emotional and psychological toll that that can take, I would also then decide that it's important to give those people what they need. So what is it that they want? They want you to make them look good. How can I do that? All right, I'll just keep doing that. So then that gets them away and they're happy with, because they don't really want me to do this anyway. And then I'll focus on what I can do that's effective. And I'll let those stakeholders who are, invested in my passion for it, know what I'm doing and why I'm doing it that way. So we're all on the same page and we all kind of we all know who's really in the same sort of boxing ring with us and who isn't, if that makes sense. Because I think a lot of energy and enthusiasm can be lost because you think you're working with a particular team that you're actually not working with.
Okay, very good. Dr. Joanne, you have driven industry level transformation. What impact are you most proud of creating so far?
Um, I guess there's lots of things really, actually. I guess I'm really proud of the amount of people that over the years, and certainly when the company was called Shine Media, that we were able to place into work. Um, I think that's definitely been great because I can see that they've gone on to be really successful. And I think we were lucky and fortunate in that a lot of the people that we worked with that then joined the industry kind of had very similar values in that they too wanted to see other people coming through. So I like the fact that in helping or supporting or facilitating whatever it looked like for each person, they've been able to do something similar for others. So that's felt really great. I think more recently, when we've when we launched the all-party parliamentary group for creative diversity, the two reports that we published in relation to what makes the creative majority, so the majority of those that are within the creative industries right across the board, and then our second follow-up report, which looked at the making of that global majority, was I think two big pieces that I'm really proud of because it that APPG allowed us to bring together industry. So all of those professionals that were in industries giving evidence about the way that the creative industries has sort of been effective at bringing about a more equitable culture and industry, if you like. And then it also brought some really incredible academics that were able to then use academic research to sort of complement that the evidence that we were getting through the submissions from industry. And then I think having the ability to create those reports and a policy recommendation report that accompanied those just meant that our chairs and vice chairs that were from the House of Lords were able to, I feel like, shape what then went on as sort of effective practice. And there were a lot of places and organisations that then referenced our work through those reports and how it had influenced what they then went on to do. So I'd say that was also really brilliant. I think there were two things at the BBC that I was pleased that we were able to do, which was to be part of the team and certainly support the team that created the TV Access project, which was the framework in which ensured that deaf, disabled and neurodivergent talent on and off screen were given more equity to make sure that they were able to contribute to make programs within all the sort of production companies, that not just the BBC but all of the public service and actually some of the streamers make, and all the independent production companies that they work with. It was a very good, and it was my colleague Nicola Garde who led on it from the BBC perspective, with other leads that were focused on disability inclusion across the other broadcasters. But I think having at the time Charlotte Moore, one of the most sort of influential people in broadcasting, driving the agenda following the Jack Thorne speech at Edinburgh, and then that and galvanising the interest, and then being able to support our team within the BBC to deliver on that was really brilliant. I think also there was a piece of work that June had started in her time at the BBC called the Waterloo Road Project, and that was really to look at how we could tackle socio-economic diversity through a programme and use that programme as a framework, if you like, or a blueprint to show how when a production is made in a particular location across the UK, how much you can engage with local communities, not only in terms of behind the camera, so them being able to contribute behind the camera, but also contributing to storylines and just shaping basically the way the programme is made to make sure that it did feel authentic and representative of its location and those licence fee payers. So I'm really proud of that framework that came as a result of that. And again, it wasn't all my doing. It was definitely given the support of those in the team. Then I think when I left the BBC, I worked with Lenny Henry Centre to review what had been a commitment prior to my time there, to look at the impact of some of their financial commitments to increasing diversity. And I felt really strongly about some of the elements of that criteria, and also the way that it had been sort of used and how it kind of came about, and whether or not it had fulfilled its purpose. And so I was really pleased to be a part of the review into its impact, and also to shape some of the recommendations that we might suggest happen going forward, to make sure that the BBC, if they were to create a commitment like that again, they would do so in a more sort of effective way, or they'd have taken learning, if you like, from that. I think some of the work that I did across the Met and also the National Police Face Action Plan has been really important work, because it's looked at a challenge at a national level and really tried to pick out where we could be more effective at tackling racism across the 43 forces. So that's in relation to the Police Face Action Plan nationally. And then I think at the Met, it has been sort of shaping the way that they're training existing officers and those coming into the service, and also those at the top of the service, to make sure that they are living their values and their principles through their in their policing. So I think there's been quite a lot of different things. There's just some that come to mind in the moment, but there's been I'd probably say there's a lot more, and I probably missed off some other stuff that I found quite significant, but there's quite a lot of examples there, I guess.
Just so many. I'm like, wow, it's just you've just done so much, and well done to all of these achievements. Of course, with all the people that you work with, making great impact and change that is deserved in the UK, definitely. Yeah, and in the communities. Thank you for that. Now we're going to the stellar woman lenses. What does it mean to you to be a stellar woman? And what attributes should a stellar woman have?
I think for me, what that probably means is I try to be myself in all circumstances. So, and when I say I try to be, it's quite difficult for me not to be. Um, so I think what I'd say a stellar woman is like actually being yourself and not feeling like you have to kind of bend and twist too much.
Yeah,
I think sometimes code switching might feel appropriate for your own safety sometimes and your own like well-being in certain environments, but otherwise I think, you know, you've been invited to a place or you're in a place, like there is a perspective that's only yours that would be useful to put forward. So I think there's that, like being myself, and I would implore others to do that. I think have integrity, and I know I use that a lot, but there's a lot of people that say things, but it's not really their values. It's not actually their operating system.
yeah,
So they just say it because it would sound like the right thing to say. So that's why I say you should be yourself, because like don't be pressured into sort of don't be pressured into going for a course, going for a cause rather, or supporting a cause, because if you don't, you would appear to like not be a very nice person. It's better to actually support it if you actually believe in it.
yes,
And sometimes you can see the importance of something, but you're just not motivated to do so much in relation to it. So I just think there's something about, yeah, I just think there's something about making sure that you have integrity in what you're doing. You know, you don't just have to follow the crowd, and because or self-serving in that. And that's why I say having integrity, because if it's typically if a piece of work is about public service, you know, just by its very definition, it's not about you. So I think it's
yeah,
important to make sure that you realize that that's the ask, and if you can't do that, then you're not really, you know, operating from a place of integrity. I'd
yeah.
say be accountable for the role you play in interactions, in relationships, in workplaces, in everything. I think that's really important. I think a lot of people find it easy to sort of manipulate reality to not face that they've done something that's probably not ideal or doesn't, you know, go along with what their ego version of themselves. So I'd say, you know, be be accountable, have integrity, be yourself, like be honest. I think a lot of people say one thing to you and another elsewhere. And I think if it's important enough to say elsewhere, it's probably important enough to say to somebody. So it's probably better just to say it to the person who can give you the direct answer or response or result that might be helpful to you. So I'd say that. And then finally, one thing that like I find really difficult in lots of areas that I work in my professional career, it's like don't be transactional. So, or if you're going to be transactional, just be upfront about that. So
Yeah.
often I feel some people operate from a place of like, what can people do for me? And it's just it's really for me anyway unattractive. Um, if it's done so in a dishonest way. So I think it's better just to say, you know, hello Stella, I notice you do this. I'd like your help with it, than to sort of befriend Stella when really the hope or aim is to get this particular thing from it. Because I think
Okay.
like, do you see what I mean? I think like if you're in a professional setting, saying to another business person or another professional, I have some shared goals, or yeah, we have shared goals. I have this I'd like to do. With what you're doing, it might benefit me, and with what I'm doing, it might benefit you. I think it's okay to be upfront about that, rather than pretending to form relationships that are of a different nature, whether that be friendship or associate, or completely just because you like someone and you've got along, when actually deep down you're thinking, once I get really close to this person, eventually I'll get access to something else. I don't really subscribe to that. I don't think that's a very nice way to operate. And it's not, I just don't think it's a very honest way to operate. And the other thing I would say is you don't need to make somebody else wrong to be right. You can
Yeah.
just have a different opinion. And you don't also have to make other people feel small in order to feel big. And I think if you're operating from a place of sort of animosity, rudeness, unsupportiveness, generally, then there's some reflection to do, because I think to operate from that place feels to me like more effort than to operate from manners and courtesy, because that typically is what comes more naturally to most people. So yeah, I think those things are quite important. So don't be transactional, just be upfront. If you want something, just say that you want it from the outset. Saves a lot of people's time and investment and emotional, distress where it can become, yeah, not great. And then I also think, like, you don't have to compete. The only person you should be competing with is yourself, really. Don't worry about, what Joanna's doing or Stella's doing. What are you doing? And
Yes.
focus on that.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, fantastic. We have a lot there to take away as for stellar women. You have to think about all of these attributes. Yeah,
Sorry, it's
authenticity,
probably too many.
integrity, accountability, honesty, being more relationship oriented rather than transactional, and also making sure that you don't make people feel small, and sometimes, of course, really ensuring that, yeah, that's I think about accountability. Uh, yeah, those are really great attributes for this, Stella. And thank you for that. Then, can you share a moment when you had to rise above fear, doubt, or pressure, and yet you chose to stand in your own brilliance anyway? This is because lots of women who are aspiring to become or to move into their dreams, purpose, mission, it's fear that stops them. And learning one or two things of how to go past those fears is key in becoming the stellar woman.
I think there is something like that I experience probably on a weekly basis. If it's not in my sort of professional life, it will certainly be in my personal. Um, because a lot, yeah, because there's a lot of instances in your life where you have to kind of sometimes back yourself because not anybody else is in that moment, maybe. So I think that happens a lot. I'd say knowing the difference between a good pound and a bad pound has been a really big lesson over the last 24 months. Sometimes, in order to keep, sometimes you start a piece of work that you really, really believe in, and you continue to believe in, but you realize that the cost to you, even though it's sort of, you're going to be paid for it, the cost to you in that relationship is not enough. It actually outweighs any benefit. And
Yeah.
sometimes it can outweigh a benefit by a country mile, like there's a lot of detrimental impacts that can come as a result of that choice. So I think know the difference between a good pound and a bad pound. Sometimes when you're running a business, you're just trying to keep the cash flow, you're trying to keep the lights on, you're trying to keep a solvent business. And so if it sounds like a piece of work that relates to your values, you may run at that, or not even run at it, but you may go into and enter into that with a open mind that everyone's on the same page. And as time goes on, you recognize that maybe you're not. And the quicker you identify that and realize, actually, what is the cost of this to me emotionally, mentally, physically, time-wise, financially, and then what are the ramifications of the effect of it on those areas? Because I think if you can do that as soon as possible, the energy that you're putting into fixing the bad pound you could be using to generate a good pound, where it's not
Mm.
going to have that impact on you. So I think there's been moments when I've had to say, this might be good for business and it might be good for me to be able to do this piece of work because the outcomes will be brilliant. But the cost to get to that point isn't um, conducive for a healthy life or a successful business sometimes. I think that I've had to do that quite a lot. I think as well, when if you lack confidence personally, you can have a lot of self-doubt when in when running a business. And certainly if you work alone a lot, you can be your own worst enemy. Excuse me, because you're in your own brain and you're not always being particularly kind to yourself. So I'd say there's many times in my career, but almost in a week where I have to try and quieten the self-criticism and the not very positive voice in relation to what I'm doing, how I'm doing it, the speed at which I'm doing it, trying to balance things because, you've got a bad pound maybe. And so it's making it difficult for other things to flow in the way you might want. There's been moments where I've had to say, actually, this doesn't serve me. And I'm not saying that's an easy thing to do because it can come with a lot of grief. But I think there's been moments where I've had to say this working relationship doesn't serve me, this network of people doesn't serve me, being in this event doesn't serve me, and then backing myself. So sometimes it's not always like actually vocally saying something. Sometimes it's a physical removal from environments that make you feel anxious or unable to relax or hyper vigilant.
Yeah,
And I think it's okay to recognize that and walk away from those situations.
yeah, yeah, yeah. To really empower yourself that you're ready to walk away from them.
Mm.
Yeah, I like the aspects of a good pound, bad pound, and really having the ability to analyze and not let fear lead you into the bad pound.
Yeah, I think we can do that in business and I don't say that lightly because someone listening to this might go, well, it's easy for her to say she must have had a business that was going okay, so just say good, no to the bad pound. But that's definitely not the case. And there have been instances where, like many companies, you're going, how's this going? Is this going to last? Is this going to survive the next 12 months of instability or when something's not very predictable, or the fluctuating opinions on things in the and the geopolitical landscape. And so it's not easy to just go, I just won't do that work when you need to pay bills and you need your business to work. So I don't say that lightly. I just think like the lesson I've learned is that there comes a limit to that. So I think that's why I say once you recognize it, that it's become a bad pound, while still getting that pound, start navigating away, start the steps away from that, so that you can start to focus in very quickly on how to build a more healthy client base that's more based on a good pound, more effective of your time, and also has that impact. So I don't say that as if like, just walk away from money when you're trying to start a business up or keep a business going. But I think once you start to recognize it, insofar as you can, try to take steps away to be able to replace that with a much healthier dynamic.
Brilliant. Thank you. So your career shows a continuous reinvention of self and purpose. What does Radiance Reborn personally mean to you?
It's a really good question. I think I'm often exhausted. So when you say the word radiance, it's not something that I feel like I immediately relate to. I'm not necessarily sure I'm radiating at the moment anything positive, but
You were.
but radiance, I'd say for me maybe is about. Did you say radiance renewal, Stella?
Yeah, it's Radiance Reborn or Radiance
Reborn.
Renewal, whatever it is. They are both free. Yeah.
I think it's accepting what you can't change.
Mm.
And I think that's hard, definitely hard for me, because I also fixate on justice and fairness. And so just because I can't change it immediately doesn't mean I don't want to. It doesn't mean that my instinct or impulsion to fix that or call it out as unfair subsides, because it doesn't. In fact, it often exacerbates it. So I think for me, like, I guess radiance is accepting what you just can't change so that it doesn't dim you, if we take it literally in terms of radiance, and then remembering that, like, something in you, along with other things and other components and other support mechanisms, got you to where you are. So it may not be what you need to get you. So, what got you to here may not be what needs to get you to there, but something in you definitely got you to there, to here. So I think there's something about continuing to hold faith in yourself and
Yeah.
remembering that getting here has taken lots of days of resilience or lots of days of tenacity, lots of days of determination and energy to keep going and to take those steps. And so remember that when you come to that radiance renewal, that there is still something in you that will help you to either acquire the skills and the approach you need to navigate the next chapter or phase in your life. Yeah, there'll be something in you that will help you do that. And so just remember that even if things aren't necessarily where you want them to be, you can still have that radiance, because you can look inside and remember it was me that, there was parts of me that got me here. So rather than reject yourself, accept those bits of yourself and accept that they exist too, along with the things that you maybe can't change. And I think as well, try not to think in totality. I think sometimes for me, if I'm making repetitive mistakes, not necessarily maybe repetitive mistakes or a catalogue of mistakes, that even though they have felt like calculated risks or sensible decisions, haven't resulted in the outcome I would have hoped for or intended. I think it's like not going inside yourself and assuming that you're a failure. And I don't use that word failure lightly, because I actually think you don't really fail, you learn. But it's really easy to think I'm not where I wanted to be, or I'm not where I think I should be, or I'm not where others are that have done this for as long as me. And so does that make me a failure? Does that mean I don't have what it takes? And I think sometimes it's just about accepting that this isn't the final, like, destination. It's a moment in the sort of journey that you're on that might be very, very tough. Um, but hopefully you can take lessons from it, even when the outcomes are just like feel catastrophic to you. So I'd say also radiance is accepting that sometimes it's going to be really, really, really hard, and you're going to feel like you're the reason for that. Um, but accepting that sometimes maybe you are contributing to things and there's that element of accountability. But after that, what can I learn then to do like differently? So I think renewal is acceptance of what you can't control, acceptance that there's the person that got you to that point is still inside you, the one that got you to the achievements that you're proud of, or the juncture that you're at that's allowing you to prepare for the next level. Something in you got you there. Don't lose that. And I think then the other bit is remembering that when something is not going to plan, it doesn't necessarily have to be a reflection of your totality, you in total, or your total journey, but instead like a part of it,
Yeah.
a season you're sort of passing through.
Okay. So it's just an aspect of this season. It's just for the moment, and you're going to be able to go to the next level. Therefore, that's really key as learning to be acceptable, just having that acceptance, and of course, having an element of accountability. But I like the last bit that you've emphasized, that this is not a reflection of your totality. And
Mm,
also remembering what got you there. There's something in you that got you to where you are. So
mm,
you hold on to that and know that you can
mhm.
carry on and you can radiate. Amazing. Thank you. How has your identity shaped your leadership? And how has your leadership shaped your identity?
They're really good questions. I think how my identity has shaped my leadership is, I think coming from a low income home, it doesn't matter what I earn, I never forget that bit. I never
Mhm.
forget that. I think it makes a big impression on you and stays with you. And so I'd say I make a lot of decisions through that lens,
Mhm.
good and bad. They come from that place. So they've shaped what I do, why I do it, and the way I do it. Um, in that regard, I think my identity is also shaped like the way I lead because others unfortunately have kind of like shown me that it had to. So being a woman in leadership means that I sometimes will get the obvious sort of microaggressions and then some nuanced ones. And so I think it's taught me to like learn how to call out the fact that those are microaggressions and they're more about the other person than they are about me. So it's just meant I've had to be a bit more bulletproof, which I'm not very good at being. Um, so that's around how my identity has shaped my leadership. How my leadership has shaped my identity, I'd say lots of ways, to be honest. Like, as I say, there is a hyperfixation on fairness in any interaction, in any moment, which is sort of extraordinary, uh, as opposed to ordinary level of that
Mhm.
expectation. And so I'd say that that can mean I can be misunderstood when I'm passionately advocating for others. So I think that has defined how people would describe my leadership. I think being compassionate and empathetic, I've had this feedback in the past, means that it has defined my leadership. So people either think I'm less intelligent than I am, that
Mhm.
they can't see that I can see they're picking their nose. I always give the metaphor of someone going like this. And it's like because you've got your hand there, you think I can't see like what you're doing. And because I'm smiling and I'm using particular discourse, sometimes a lot of people think they're pulling the wool over my eyes, and they very, very rarely are. But I'm just very good at, I think, sometimes letting people think they have when they really, really haven't. Um, so I'd say like I think that's shaped me. I feel like when I've just called out things and been really direct, you get given a load of names and you're called a lot of names, you know. Um, and so sometimes it's easier to just pivot and see it for what it is and operate with that reality without sharing it, if that makes sense. But
Yes.
that's taken a long thing to learn, a long time to learn because there's been many an occasion where I found it very difficult to hold the fact that I can see like something that's happening. Um, I think people think I'm like especially busy as a leader. Um, and so, but often through maybe like a lack of paying attention to like what's going on. So sometimes they can weaponize like busyness in their
Mhm.
view based on, an Instagram selection of photos to decide that they can use that as leverage to not be accountable for something they've done because they've got the distraction of being able to say to people, but she is really busy, so maybe she's dropped the ball on it. Or so it's a quite a good deflection tool that I think people have used to undermine like my leadership.
Okay.
Um, I think as well, when it comes to, yeah, I think I've probably touched on it. I think there is the assumed naivety, the assumed chaos that people use for their own benefit. There is the assumed like sense of like me being gullible when I'm really not. I can see straight through it. Um, And then also like a lot of people, I used to find this saying really overused and I didn't really get it. As in, I got it in principle, but I hadn't felt it. But that saying, people taking kindness for weakness,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
because most people I find they might be nice, but they're not that kind. There's a
Yes.
lot of people that are nice, but not kind.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people I know that are incredibly kind, but there's in the work world, sometimes there's people that are nice, but they're not kind, right? And they can conflate the two.
Mhm.
And but when they notice a kindness, they think that you're being kind, that they create reasons for your kindness so that they don't have to like address the fact that they're not very kind. So they might think you're kind because you want to be liked, or you're kind because you want something in return, because it's completely beyond them that someone's just kind, because that's just not where they operate from. So I think like if someone can see that they know they're taking the mick out of you, but they think you don't know that, and
Mhm.
still you're being kind, they can think it's weakness. They think they're really weak or silly, when actually it's a lot of strength to see someone is being harmful towards you and still choose kindness.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But people will position that as weakness. So I'd say that those things have probably shaped how I lead, but also
Yes.
how people would think of me as a leader.
Oh, fantastic. There's a great way you've demonstrated all of that, the identity to leadership. So, from boardroom to talent pipelines, you've championed representation at every level. What still needs to change in the UK for equity to be truly realized?
I think people have to decide that they care about it. I know that sounds ridiculous, but like you think they do because they've said it on a website, or you think they do because there's a strategy that says they do. But I think the only way to change it is you actually have to care about it yourself.
Yeah.
And I think people think caring about it means it like it's going to take a bit more time. It's like you know what I mean? I think people see like because life is kind of always telling us to do loads of things to be successful in different parts of our life. So you eat a certain way, you sleep a certain way, you know, you exercise a certain amount, you have this many mindfulness minutes, you meditate, you know, you only eat this, you only drink that. Like there's so many things that make you like, you know, like this super effective, successful person, you know. Um, that I think people think that if you ask them to do anything, you're asking them to add to that list.
Yeah.
But actually it's not. It's saying to you, that, you know, the work you already do, the thing you're already doing, maybe do that differently because it might be more efficient. But it's
Yeah.
not positioned that way. People think that if it's not broken, why am I fixing it? So they might think, oh, you know, um, I've managed to recruit X amount of people. They've all done a fine job. But no one's saying that they haven't done a fine job. But what they are suggesting is that there might be other people that are also really brilliant who you never get to meet, who could have done an exceptional job, you know, and you just haven't introduced them to your own yeah, they're just not visible to you, to your own organization. So I think they have to like recognize there's a value in doing it and actually
Yeah.
believe that, or we're just going to go around in these performative circles.
Mm.
Um, and if they can't sort of physically feel the value of it, I think they need to use the objective and logical value of it to just to do it. Whereas I think at the moment people think it's just another like getting a more diverse talent pool adds another 4 hours to their day when it doesn't really. You know, like you're just going to look different to a different place than the place you always look.
Yeah,
And I
that's
know what they'll go, well, we have to vet, we have to get to know. And I'm like, well, yeah, but you had to do that at another point in your career too. So I'd say that.
fantastic. Now, on the aspect of belief, what is the one belief about yourself that you had to unlearn in order to rise?
Um, I'm still unlearning it, to be honest. I wouldn't say I've like unlearned it yet, but I've had to unlearn that. I had to word it. I've had to unlearn the idea that I'm not strong on, I'm not enough. I hate that phrase though, so I'm trying to avoid it. But that like I'm not sufficient enough
Mm.
on my own, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yes.
Um, so sometimes you might be in a room and ask yourself in your head, or like get anxious about why you're in that room, or how come, you're in there, and why don't you sound how they sound, and why don't you speak how they speak? You know what I mean? You have to I've had to unlearn that like being me is wrong, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I've had to unlearn yeah, that's not the case. I've also had to unlearn this idea that if you're kind to other people, they're kind to you, or if you're supportive of other people, they're supportive of you. Because actually, what I found is that over time, if you just stop, you see what people really want to do.
Yeah.
Um, and when you see what they really want to do, you also see who's still standing around, checking what you might need or how to help, and vice versa for them. So I think I've had to unlearn that people just start from a place of positivity, because that isn't the case. And the other thing I've had to unlearn is to not trust immediately.
Mm.
So I've made countless mistakes in my career so far, and even in my personal life, because I've started from trust as opposed to let people earn my trust. So I've had to unlearn that. I've had to unlearn that just because you wouldn't do it doesn't mean other people wouldn't do it. And most people don't see your kindness as an attribute. They see it as a flaw because it's not in them. And so they weaponize it to feel less inadequate, sorry. Um, and then they can also put like a spin on your why to make them feel less down about like maybe what they have or haven't done. But yeah, I've had to unlearn that that's not really a me problem. That problem is something that most people need to deal with internally, which is why are you worried about what everyone else is doing in the first place? Why are you not focused on yourself in regards to like what you're trying to achieve? So I'd say those things.
Yeah, thank you. I want to just personally to ask you a bit on trust and learning trust, because that's actually a point in time where I am, how to navigate from trusting immediately everybody comes with 100% in my life, and going into the space where people have to answer. Was that easy for you to change to where people have to earn the trust?
It wasn't. It's taken a long, long time. But then you know what? I think if you if you're shown something over and over and you don't respond to it, I find that you just keep getting shown it over and over and over until you're almost forced to respond to it. So, at that point where you're finding it difficult, unfortunately, in my case, it means that it's going to happen again,
Yeah.
you know. So, what I've done now is the trust element has been like obliterated in so many ways, professionally and personally, to be honest, that what I've done is reminded myself that of the feeling I get when that trust has been broken, and how heavy that feeling can be for someone that's like as sensitive as I am and as intuitive as I am, and I hold that. So I start a relationship with that feeling in my gut, and I know it's not necessarily the positive way, but it was the only way for me to be able to listen and watch before making decisions on individuals. Whereas someone could sell me a positive story, and I would think they're fantastic people. And then you never know when you go into sort of business relationships that that's not necessarily the case. So I think there might be fantastic people, but I mean in terms of your working relationship with them. So I would say like don't ignore the gut feeling that you get. I've got a framed picture on my coffee table that says gut feelings are guardian angels. And it's a
Okay.
reminder to me that I don't think I've ever had an experience in any time in my life, in any area of my life, where my gut didn't tell me something about it at the time. And I ignored it because I wanted it to be nice. I wanted to see the positive. I didn't want the impact of it on me. But all you do is delay the impact, because the impact shows itself anyway. So I think because that person's always going to be disingenuous, whether you find out today, or if you find out in 6 months, or if you find out in 10 years. So I think that gut feeling, listen to it. I think as well, don't over elevate the role that people have in your lives. So like I've had to learn that I might like that person for all of these reasons, but also be aware of what's harmful in their approach to me. And so manage myself in that context. It doesn't mean you have to keep having these conversations with people, but recognize the harm it does to you, whether they appreciate that or not, and then find a way to navigate that. So I'd say like trust your gut and hold that feeling when it hurts. Like try and bring it back when you're meeting that new relationship. And also, another thing that's just a practical tip is when I've made mistakes, I've often written down the questions I should have asked, or the
Okay.
things I should have done or said, or what my contract should have said, or like how I should have amended terms of that engagement, or how I could have better prepared for that session. What steps do I need to take? And so I'd write those down because then I learned to trust myself more too. If I see that if like I look at what the data tells me about my own involvement in something, then I look at what I need to do then to change it live in that moment. And then I build trust in myself if I follow through.
Okay. Wow. I've taken down the notes for myself.
No, okay.
Okay. So how can women, especially women of color, cultivate confidence in spaces where they are often underrepresented?
I think you have to go in and do the thing that like racehorses do when you have your blinkers on. I think you've just got to look forward. Like, I think you need to you almost have like these imaginary like blinkers each side of you that doesn't let you get distracted with what's going on your left or your right. I think that's the only way in those rooms. You need to think like, if you're going into a meeting, know what's my role in this meeting? What's my purpose in this meeting? And then only be concerned like with that in terms of your contributions, and then politely suggest or make suggestions where you feel you can add some value or constructive, excuse me, value or constructive challenge. Like, yeah, like do that, but don't worry about am I liked? Do they think I'm bright enough? Do they think I deserve to be here? That's noise that one, you're never going to really know the truth of the answer. You don't really want to ask that because unfortunately, if we go back to that point on trust, if somebody knows a vulnerability, it's not everybody that's kind about that vulnerability. Some people use that to their advantage. So you can't ask it. So all you're doing is just kind of beating yourself up when actually the energy could be used on, well, what was I here for? What's the purpose of the meeting? And what did I want to get from it? So I think go in and have the blinkers on in that regard. And then just appreciate that you're in a team setting and there's other people that have other like agendas and motivations and things that they need to get from that meeting. Be respectful and courteous of that. But just I think the important thing is to appreciate that, yeah, that you're not to worry about what everyone else is doing and thinking, but focus more on yourself and how you're going to operate in that room.
Okay. So what role do you believe women will play in shaping the future of leadership in Britain and the world?
It's a really big question. I think it's a big question because I don't have a general view of women.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? I don't think women are more this as a leader or men are more that as a leader. I don't have that because I've seen such a variety of leaders
Yeah.
who are both, male, female, non-binary. So I feel that there is like a what would I what do I think the future is going to hold? I think we're going to have more anxiety around leadership, especially inclusive leadership and culture change. Because one, I think data tells us that already, but two, because I think so many people have conflated the point of culture and people and equity and diversity and inclusion and inclusive leadership with other matters that are not what the ask is, that I think that overwhelm alone can provide anxiety. And you've now got people, rather than it feeling like it's about creating a culture of a working culture where people can thrive, I think people are now concerned it's more about a culture of where you're being required to know the right language to say at the right time and be very politically correct, rather than that much broader ask. So I think there's going to be more anxiety. I think there's going to be more tensions and frustration due to the conflation. I was in the shop the other day and I saw that Piers Morgan's written a book about wokeism. And I just thought this is what's going to happen now. They're going to say, we tried all that D&I stuff and look where it's got us. You know what I mean? And I think the reality is not many did actually try the D&I stuff in the right way with the right reasons and in the most effective way. And so you think, well, it was a lot of the trying was set up to fail in the first place. And now we've used the outcomes of that to ridicule the values and the principles that underpin it. And so I
Mhm.
think we're gonna have a future of that conflation being exacerbated and that lack of understanding only emphasized more and increased. So I don't necessarily think in terms of leadership that leaders have a very uh, non-challenging path ahead. What I would say on a positive note, though, is that those that are coming through from the next generation are a little bit more based on just their generation and the population of their generation, are just a little bit more every day about inclusion. So a little bit more aware that there are different people and out there, and how do you respect that difference? I think we've got a younger generation coming through that are quite active in understanding that and have understood it slightly better than I think those that might be in the leadership positions at the moment. Yeah.
Get you. That's amazing that at least we have young leaders coming through. So as we
Mm.
continue to talk about renewal and a vision, Christmas is a season for renewal and light. What does this season symbolize for you personally?
Excuse me. So, what I would say is Christmas for me is not my favorite time of year, I'll be honest.
Really?
I'm not, I think when you've got little children around, you can get excited about it, but I think when you don't, it's
Yeah,
just a kind of another day. The only thing I quite like about it is lots of food, being with family, playing games. And I really only see Christmas as 3 days. I don't really see it more than that. Whereas I know some
yeah,
people see it as like a period of sort of 2 weeks and stuff. I don't really see it that way. So once those 3 days are gone, it doesn't really hold as much meaning to me as it may have done as a kid. Um, I always see it though as a period of reflection. And so sometimes that's why I say earlier, making sure that you're nice to yourself, because in reflection you can look back on things and focus too heavily on those lessons and maybe not on the progress or maybe not on the wins. And so this is a time I would say, excuse me, for reflection, but also like setting goals for the next year. Because I always split my year into quarters, and start with the end of the year of what I want to be saying at the end of the year. And then I work backwards. And the reason I do that is so that I can be intentional quarter by quarter, month by month, week by week, so that things don't go amiss, because life can happen. And without that intention set out and that goal to go towards each year, I think you can get swept up in life.
wow, that's amazing. Just having starting with the end of the year, what will you be saying? And making sure that that leads your intention and goal. So as we enter the new year, what message of hope would you like to share with women across the world?
I think, like, I would say that if the last couple of years have been really hard, for you running a business or in your workplace, to try and see that as like the years of like shedding, learning, moving away from understanding, so that it doesn't feel like a big negative reflection, if you like, and it doesn't feel too heavy. And so I'd say try and take that the previous couple of years, the previous year, with a pinch of salt in a much bigger picture of where you're going and where you're headed. So I'd say if you're going to reflect at the beginning of the year, try not to dwell and instead accept it for what it has taught you and use that then to move forward. And then I would also say if I could say anything again, just based on my experience, it would be trust yourself. You're not wrong. about what you feel. So trust yourself. And I think if you trust what you feel, you explore it, you address it. I think operating in working environments and in a entrepreneurial context becomes much more manageable. So I would say, like, trust how you feel this year. And yeah, yeah, I'd say trust how you feel this year and give yourself grace for when there are some of the slip ups, perhaps, of old habits returning, and then go again.
Mm, fantastic. Thank you for that. If you could define the theme for 2026 for women and leaders everywhere, what could it be?
I'd say like effectiveness and efficiency, EE, I guess.
Hmm.
How efficient, how efficient do I want to be? How effective do I want to be? How efficient do I want to be at being effective? You know what I mean? How effective will my attempts to be efficient be? I think for me that's the big theme. I think if you can be efficient with your time and the way you allocate your time and spend your time, then you can hopefully be more effective with that time.
Mm. Okay, in allocation of time will lead to effectiveness of time, use of time.
Precisely.
Oh, wow. That's a bank there. An aha change maker there. How would you envision the world for women?
I think it should be, I think it should be one where it's equitable, and I think equitable with all of its intersections. Sometimes I get nervous or anxious about the idea of feminism if it feels like it's only speaking to particular females. That person who's saying, you know, that they feel strongly about feminism, for example, they're only talking about other women that they feel they relate to or look like them. And so I'd say like what would I envisage? I'd envisage like equity for all women and those women, so all women and all of their intersections. I
Mm.
think I think you can't have an image of a woman when you think about women because they're all so different. So just being reminding ourselves that what might work for us isn't going to work for somebody else. So that envisaging for women what they need as individuals with their intersectional identities.
Yeah, fantastic. Now, what is the one, is there a lesson that you would give your 15-year-old self? If you met her,
Hmm.
what would you tell her, the younger Joanna?
In a professional context, I would tell her maybe do what you say you're going to do,
Okay.
or call out what you see at that time is probably a better one, actually.
Mm.
Because sometimes I think as women, you can see in a situation that's making you uncomfortable. And what you do is you own the uncomfortableness to save the other person feeling uncomfortable. So then you're carrying how uncomfortable you feel, the uncomfortableness of the situation, and then any sort of assumed uncomfortability that the other person has. And I think when you do that, you then promise things or agree to things that you're not actually comfortable with. So that's why I say like say what you're going to do, say what do what you're going to do what you said you're going to do. Sorry.
Yeah. Mm.
Um, that's why I say that because I think if you start from that point of view, only say what you're going to do, then it teaches you to get more disciplined about calling out the things that make you feel uncomfortable doing them. Does that make sense? So I almost
Yeah.
want to start from the outcome, which is I would have done what I said I was going to do. Okay, well, what's stopping me doing that then? Oh,
Mm.
it's usually because I'm not being as frank as I might want to be in these scenarios about what I dislike or feel uncomfortable about because it's not been create an environment or relationship or atmosphere or culture, insert whatever word was appropriate, hasn't been in place that has given me the I don't know, maybe the impression or the safety to think I can do that. And I think even beyond that, like if we look at the bigger picture, there is also something about the fact that I think women have been socialized sometimes not all women, but I certainly think I have, um, to sometimes like if I'm feeling uncomfortable, accept it rather than say, I don't want to do that. That feels like I'm not getting much out of that. It feels like you're saying this, but really you mean that. And I think if I called it out more,
Yeah.
then I would. But that requires people to not make you feel uncomfortable when you do call it out.
Yes, that's true. So creating that safe environment for people to be able to, yeah,
Mm.
when things are uncomfortable. That's very good for her. She would learn a lot from that, being honest
Yeah.
with herself. Yeah. So how would you like your legacy to inspire the next generation of women leaders?
I've never thought about having a legacy, but I guess if I answer that, it would just be like empathy. What is this world without empathy? Honestly, I would say like try really hard to put yourself in the shoes of other people and like just remember to be a student. You don't know everything. It's okay to like at any point, however senior you get, however many titles you get, like just try and stay a student to things around you and be curious and sort of forensic. So if I had any legacy, I'd guess I'd want people to lead with empathy, to be values based in their leadership,
Mm.
principled, to have integrity. And like I guess if I had to sum it up, it would be like you can achieve things and be kind without
Yeah.
there being this flaw in you.
Mm.
And you can do those things. You can achieve things and be kind as a woman without having like used your sexuality in order to do that. Because I think sometimes women can be discredited for a lot of blood, sweat, and tears because somebody's decided that the aesthetic of that woman has contributed in some way. And it might have done, but it doesn't take away.
What you're
It might
saying.
have done without their awareness. It might have done with their awareness, but it wouldn't have also taken away from, hopefully, it wouldn't have, the fact that someone would have had to work incredibly hard too to achieve any of the things that they've set out to.
Sure, sure. That's a great one. That's a great one. What's the world without empathy? So if we can bring empathy, kindness, and value best in the leadership, and those aspects would be key, and that would be great to have it as your legacy. So as we finish off, we want to always leave one challenge, a challenge to help women to radiate and become stellar women. What is that one challenge that you can leave women?
It's quite a few that came to my mind then. But one I think I would say to them is at the end of this year, it's the Christmas episode, isn't it? So at the end of the year, sit down with a piece of paper and say, what do I want to be saying I've achieved or I feel at the end of 2026? So I want to feel, let's say, confident about X. I want to feel happy with with decisions I've made in relation to Y.
Yeah.
I want to feel excited about 2027. That might be, one of the things, just to give an example. And then what will I want to have achieved? Like for me, it might be I've got, a distinction in my conversion course, that I'm on track for a distinction at the bar within the, with the bar course at the end of 2026, that the business has, had a really steady cash flow, let's say. And so my task is sit there and go, what do you want for those? What do you want to be saying and how do you want to feel at the end of 2026? And then work back and say, okay, so what do I need to do in the quarter one, quarter two, quarter three, and quarter four to be able to say that at the end of 2026? And once you've done that, you go again and you go, right, so what does that mean I need to do each month? And what do I need to do each week? Because if you're not intentional about those things, life happens whether we like it or not. And so that allows you to keep those intentions being hit and met while life is happening, all the things that you can't predict.
Wow, amazing. We are going to star and become stellar in 2026. We become such stellar women in 2026 with that approach, that framework, that blueprint we're going to follow. So start in the year, look at what you're going to be saying and how you're going to be feeling, and then take it into quarters, and then look at it in
Huh?
every month.
And then every week.
Yes. And remember, because life happens, and because of that, you need to be super intentional with your time and your energy. It has been amazing having you, Dr. Joanna Abeyie, here in the Stellar Woman Show and for the magazine. You have shared generously your time, your knowledge, your expertise, all the experiences, and we are super, super grateful. So I hope you will learn one or two things and be inspired to make a change and especially follow through to that particular challenge. So it has been me, Stella Chikoyo, and Olivia Chikoyo here, your editor-in-chief and your host of the Stellar Woman show and magazine, but also with Dr. Joanna Abeyie here in our studio. So thank you so much for joining us. So bye-bye. Merry Christmas to you all. Is there one word you have to say, Dr. Joanna?
I was just going to say thank you so much for having me, and for being so generous with the time and being able to touch on so much of this, and just wishing you all the best with Stella. It's the second time we've been able to work together, and I hope it just continues. And yeah, I wish everyone a really lovely Christmas, and remember the challenge I set.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.